Welcome back to Speak More Fluently. Today, we're tackling something really important, I think, a surprisingly powerful skill for anyone learning English. And that's mastering the art of asking for clarification.
hmm
Have you ever felt, a bit lost in a conversation, or maybe worried you're missing crucial information?
Oh, absolutely. We've all been there.
We really have. So stick with us for this deep dive because by the end, you'll have, well, a whole set of practical tools, tools that won't just boost your understanding, but really build your confidence speaking English,
Yeah.
leading to much smoother, much more successful interactions overall.
It's such a key point, isn't it? That feeling when something just doesn't quite click. It's almost, well, it's a universal experience when you're navigating a new language.
Definitely.
And it's fascinating how our response to that feeling, whether we just stay quiet or actively try to understand how that can dramatically change things, change the outcome of the conversation and our learning journey too.
Absolutely. Yeah, think about those times where you've maybe just nodded along, right? Hoping you'd eventually figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Guilty.
Yeah, me too. Only to realize later you completely missed the point. It can lead to some pretty awkward or even costly mistakes, can't it?
It really can. And, it's not just about avoiding those negative outcomes. There's a really positive side to this, too.
Okay.
When you proactively ask for clarity, you're actually doing more than just, filling a gap in your understanding. You're signaling something really important to the person you're talking to.
Like what exactly? What kind of message are we sending when we ask someone to explain again?
Well, it shows genuine engagement, doesn't it?
Right.
It tells the speaker, look, your words matter to me, and I'm actually making an effort to truly grasp what you're saying. That act, that seeking understanding, it builds a much stronger connection, much stronger than just letting things slide.
Yeah, it's almost like a little sign of respect, like saying, I value this chat enough to make sure I'm actually following along. Precisely. And then think about it from a learning perspective. When you hit something you don't understand and you actively work to clarify it, what's actually happening inside your brain?
I guess you're forcing yourself to really engage with the language, aren't you? To actively process the sounds, the meaning, not just passively hearing it drift by.
Exactly. It's active engagement, not passive listening. By pinpointing that area of confusion and trying to resolve it, you're basically giving your brain a targeted workout.
Okay.
And this helps solidify new vocabulary, new grammar structures way more effectively than just hearing them in passing.
Okay, right. So we know why it's crucial. Now let's get practical. How can we actually ask for this clarification without sounding, completely lost or maybe even a bit rude?
Yeah, good question. It's really about having a range of tools, a kind of toolkit at your disposal. So imagine you simply didn't catch what someone said. Maybe they spoke too fast or there was noise. In that moment, a simple, sorry, I didn't quite catch that, could you say it again? It's perfectly fine, totally normal. Or you could try, I'm not sure I follow you there. Would you mind repeating that? Slightly different feel, maybe a bit more formal, but same goal. And sometimes something more casual like, could you run that by me one more time? Works really well.
Yeah.
Depending on the situation, of course.
Those are great for when, the sound itself didn't quite land. But what if you heard all the words perfectly clear, but the meaning is still foggy?
Ah, right. That's when you need to be a little more specific about what is causing the confusion.
Pinpoint it.
Exactly. You could say something like, when you say the specific word or phrase, what exactly do you mean by that?
Okay.
Or maybe by the term they use, do you mean something like, and then offer your interpretation. This shows you're thinking, you're trying to meet them halfway.
I like that. Shows effort.
It does. And a very direct, what does that particular expression mean in this context? Can be super effective. It just zooms right in on the tricky bit.
So it's not just a vague, It's a targeted question about a specific piece of what they said.
Precisely. And then you've got those situations where, okay, you understand the individual words, maybe the phrase, but how it all fits together or how it applies to this situation is unclear.
Yeah. The classic, I get the ingredients, but I have no idea how to bake the cake scenario.
Exactly like that. Perfect analogy. In those cases, asking for an example is incredibly helpful.
Right.
You could say, could you maybe give me an example of how that works?
Simple enough.
Or can you explain how that applies in our current situation, make it relevant? And if it's a process, something with steps.
Oh, yeah, those can be tricky.
Definitely. Breaking it down is essential. A simple, would you mind walking me through that step by step? Can make a huge difference.
Those concrete examples really help illustrate how to be specific. Now, you mentioned context. Are there differences when you're in, say, a more professional setting? Are some phrases better suited for business English?
Yeah, definitely. In a professional context, clarity and efficiency are often prized, right?
Makes sense. Time is money.
Pretty much. So phrases like, could we just quickly go over the key points again before we move on? Very common, very well received. Shows you want alignment.
Okay.
If you need to confirm details meeting times, deadlines, something direct like, just to confirm, are we meeting at 2 p.m. or 3 p.m., is perfectly fine. Essential, really, to avoid ambiguity.
Good point.
And when you're talking about tasks or responsibilities, being crystal clear about expectations is vital. So a question like, could you please clarify the specific action items you need from me? Very effective, very professional.
So the environment definitely shapes the language a bit, the formality. But that underlying principle, seeking clarity, stays the same.
Absolutely. And importantly, it's not just about the words we use. We communicate on multiple levels, don't we?
You mean like body language?
Exactly. Our body language plays a significant role in how our request for clarification is received and even how open we appear to needing it in the first place.
Okay, interesting. Let's dive into that. How can we use nonverbal cues to signal, maybe subtly, that we might need a little more explanation?
Well, simple things can be surprisingly effective. For instance, nodding while someone is speaking. It shows you're engaged, you're listening, and it kind of encourages them to continue.
Right. Basic listening signal.
Yeah. Maintaining comfortable eye contact also shows you're paying attention. It makes it feel more natural to then pause and ask a clarifying question if needed.
Okay.
And having an open posture, not crossing your arms, facing the speaker, it just makes you seem more approachable, more receptive, more willing to understand.
It's like you're creating a welcoming space for them to help you understand better non-verbally.
Exactly right. And when you combine those nonverbal signals with some active listening techniques, it really reinforces your desire to understand. It becomes a whole package.
Okay, so give us some practical examples. What are some active listening techniques we can use right alongside asking for clarification?
Sure. One really powerful technique is paraphrasing. After someone explains something, you can say, okay, so if I understand correctly, you're saying that, and then you repeat the core idea back in your own words.
So you test your understanding immediately.
Precisely. It not only confirms your understanding, but also gives the speaker a chance to correct you right away if you've misinterpreted something. Super useful.
That's really smart. A great way to make sure you're both definitely on the same page. What else can we do?
Summarizing is another good one, especially after maybe a longer or more detailed explanation.
Right.
You can sort of recap the main points by saying something like, okay, just so I'm clear.
Yeah.
The key takeaways are X, Y, and Z, right?
Nailing down the main points.
Yep. And don't underestimate the simple power of verbal back channels. Those little sounds like, I see, or right.
Yeah.
They let the speaker know you're actively following their train of thought without interrupting the flow too much.
Yeah, those little verbal cues, they really keep the conversation flowing and signal you're still with them. Okay, so we've got the why, we've got the phrases, the nonverbals, the active listening. How do we actually start weaving these into our everyday English conversations? How do we practice?
Practice is absolutely crucial. It's like any skill. One really effective method is role-playing exercises.
Okay.
If you have a language partner, a tutor, or even just a friend who's also learning, take turns explaining things. Simple concepts, maybe directions, a recipe, whatever. And then practice asking for clarification using the phrases and techniques we've talked about.
That sounds like a really safe space to experiment, get comfortable with actually saying the words out loud. What about practicing solo?
Yeah, you can definitely practice on your own. Listening to English language podcasts like this one or watching videos can be great. Actively listen. And whenever you hit a point that feels unclear, just pause mentally or even physically pause the recording and think, okay, how would I ask for clarification here?
Like a mental rehearsal.
Exactly. You can even say the phrase out loud. It helps build that sort of muscle memory, these crucial communication skills. You get used to forming the question.
That's a good way to train your ear and your mouth at the same time. What about looking back, reflecting on past conversations?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Keeping maybe a short reflective journal can be very insightful. And today, just take a few moments. Think about conversations you had in English. Were there any spots where you felt unsure but maybe didn't ask? Why not? What could you have said? Also, what went well?
Right.
Writing these reflections down helps solidify the learning and pinpoint areas where you want to improve.
So it's about being mindful, isn't it? Noticing those moments of uncertainty and proactively thinking about how we could handle them better next time. Okay, brilliant. Before we wrap up this deep dive, do you have any final tips, maybe some quick pointers for asking for clarifications smoothly, confidently?
Yes, just a few key things to keep in mind. Firstly, be polite, but also be direct. You usually don't need to over-apologize.
Right.
A simple, followed by your direct request is often enough. English speakers generally really value clear and concise communication. Get to the point.
Good to know. Don't need a 5-minute apology first.
Exactly. Secondly, when it feels appropriate, try using the speaker's name. Something like, Sarah, could you elaborate on that last point? It just makes the request feel a bit more personal, maybe warmer, less confrontational.
That makes sense, yeah. It feels more like a direct person-to-person interaction rather than just a general statement of confusion floating in the air.
Precisely. Also, really try to maintain a neutral and curious tone.
Yeah.
Even if you're feeling a bit lost or frustrated, try not to let it show in your voice.
Keep it friendly.
Keep it friendly. Keep it inquisitive. That approach will always be better received. And finally, consider offering to summarize your understanding after they explain. It shows you're actively engaged, you're trying, and gives them one last chance to catch any misinterpretations.
Taking initiative. I like that. Those are all incredibly helpful, really actionable tips. So I guess the key message here, the big takeaway, is that actively seeking clarification isn't some kind of weakness, is it? It's actually a really powerful strategy.
Absolutely.
A strategy for becoming a more confident, more effective English speaker.
Yeah, precisely. It's about taking control of your own understanding. It's about building stronger connections with the people you're speaking to. And ultimately, it really accelerates your whole language learning journey.
Okay, fantastic. So here's a practical step for you, our listener. Something to try. In your very next English conversation, whenever that might be, consciously try to use just one or maybe two of the clarification techniques we've explored today.
Just one or two.
Yeah. Start small. And really pay attention to how it affects your understanding and also how it affects your overall confidence in that interaction. You might just be surprised by the positive impact it has on your ability to, well, speak more fluently,